G'day mate, 40 here. So these are exciting times that we live in, and I noticed that the left's critique of Donald Trump's plan for Gaza is interesting. It's all about words, right? It's this Trump plan, guys, it invokes imperialism. This Trump plan, it involves ethnic cleansing. This horrible Trump plan, it's colonialism. This Trump plan, it violates international law. This Trump plan, it violates international norms. This Trump plan, it's receiving words of opposition from Europe and from Arab countries and from Palestinians. Apparently there is a tsunami of words taking great exception to this Donald Trump plan. And Donald Trump is not first and foremost a wordsmith. He is first and foremost a practical man, a man of practical action, and a builder, right? A real estate developer. And so his primary focus is not on words. His primary focus is on images, emotional experiences, and on actions. And Tyler Cowan wrote a perceptive blog post today talking about how Donald Trump is primarily focusing on changing the culture. The primary purpose of this fusillade of executive orders and news conferences and plans is to capture attention and to capture attention on issues that play to Trump's favor, to MAGA favor, to Republicans' favor, because there are certain issues that tend to favor Republicans and conservatives, just like there are certain issues that tend to favor Democrats and liberals. Now, after World War II, there was a massive relocation of the people of the losing powers, particularly Germany. So millions of Germans were relocated from Soviet Union and Eastern European countries, possibly Western European countries. Ethnic cleansing has been the rule, not the exception, after the conclusion of a war. So what Donald Trump is proposing for Gaza is pretty much the rule in these type of events, right? Gaza has been on the warpath against Israel pretty much since 1967, and it's lost convincingly after launching the war in 2023. Now Gaza, like pretty much every other entity since the beginning of time, has lost a war. Now they'll have to pay the price, and it will get moved around. And you can say this is a violation of international law, humanitarian norms. You can invoke all sorts of beautiful words for why this is horrible. But it is the norm of history. This is what happens when you lose wars, right? People who live in a country, they will overwhelmingly share the fate of that country. And so why would Gaza be exempt from that? And it's not as though everything that we've had until now has worked out particularly well. Right? It's not as though we're letting go of these awesome plans that have just proven so successful in the Middle East over the past 120 years. Right? This is totally out of the box thinking. It's hilarious. And words may not be enough to stop it. Concepts such as human rights and international law, right? Who enforces international law? Right? The extent to which the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit is a valid legal concern in our lives when we're driving in the United States only to the extent that it is enforced. And in the United States, in my experience, speed limit laws are only enforced if you're 10 miles an hour or more over the speed limit. So the practical speed limit when the signs say 55 is usually 65 in the United States. Now, that's not true in Australia. In Australia, in a 100 kilometer hour maximum speed zone, you can get a speeding ticket for driving 102. But in the US, you generally get 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, right, before they write you a speeding ticket. So law is not just a theory, it's not just words in a book. Law depends on individuals who enforce it. And who enforces international law? Well, interested parties who have the strength and the power to enforce international law will, when it is in their interest, enforce international law. But if it's not in their interest, they won't bother to enforce international law. So international law doesn't have any massive army behind it. International law doesn't have some formidable force that's going to wreak havoc on you if you violate it. International law isn't something that's written on stone throughout time, unchanging. It's some transcendent moral code. So most of the results of war throughout history would violate today's standards of international law. Now, here's another critique that I noticed that's really fascinating, that Donald Trump is ridiculed by many in the media and many political professionals in the center and the left, for he hasn't been able to pass legislation. So the Republicans only operate the House of Representatives on the basis of one vote. And the primary purpose of Donald Trump's executive orders is not necessarily practical legislation, right? The spirit is a valid concern. So Donald Trump's executive orders are restoring the spirit of America, of traditional America. I will admit, since the Obergefell decision, I have felt somewhat nauseated by a United States that mandates that same-sex marriage is marriage and is the law of the land in all states. Right? That decision absolutely nauseates me in a way no other decision has ever made me sick. Because I have a particular hero system. I didn't ask directly to have this kind of emotional, stomach-churning reaction. It's just the nature of my political hero system. It's, I assume, a result of largely being in traditional religious communities most of my life, having a right-wing genetic predisposition, the social incentives that operate in my life that militate towards a right-wing hero system. So I didn't deliberately choose this hero system that so nauseates me with regard to the Obergefell decision. It's my visceral response prior to the cognitive. And there's no inherent reason why a cognitive response, why some carefully argued rational response is inherently superior to just an emotional, physiological response. And so Donald Trump's executive orders and his outrageous plans and his command of the nation's attention is really good for the physiology of not just those who support him, but those who like to see an active, amusing, energized president. Right? So many people who not really Trump supporters are enjoying this Trump administration for showing what is possible for an energized president to do. Capturing our attention, right? That matters physiologically, right? That feels good in much of the country, But even some people on the left feel good about Donald Trump's energetic administration because they see now what's possible if someone from their side wins the presidency, and inevitably someone from their side will win the presidency, and then they can look back and this can restore their power in the faith of their presidency. So under Joe Biden, you had a president who was checked out and senile and sleepy and highly ineffective most of the time. So if you believe in activist government taking care of problems to help the people, then there may be reasons why you physiologically feel excited and thrilled by what's going on with the first 16 days of the Donald Trump administration. You would just want this kind of energy and thought on your side. And what matters in politics is not just passing legislation. And a lot of legislation has unintended side effects, all right? That's stage one thinking. Stage one, you do something, you pass legislation, but the reactions to the legislation may do far more harm than good. So Trump has energized our attention. He has upped the happiness level for tens of millions of Americans. And this is legitimate. This is important, right? You need strength to get through the day. If you're going to get anything important done, you need strength, you need enthusiasm, you need energy, you need to have a sense that you're connected with other people. So tens of millions of Americans are connecting with MAGA, with Donald Trump, with this energizing new presidential administration that's making them happier, stronger. People are feeling joy, right? This is a real politics of joy. And it is bringing attention to issues that matter to what one bloke would call the country party. All right, so the left is in control of almost all of our institutions. All right, city slicker, book learning, members of the intelligentsia with elite university degrees run almost all of our institutions. And they tend to have views that are widely rejected by the American public. So our elites favor far more censorship of social media than do ordinary Americans. Our elites favor far more intrusive government regulation to mitigate climate change than ordinary Americans. So there's example after example of where the elites who run this country and run our major institutions are diametrically opposed by regular people. And now, under this populist Trump administration, right, regular people feel heard. Trump is running so fast that it's hard to keep up with him. Yeah, right, he's moving at the speed of Trump. That's a great phrase, the speed of Trump. The speed of light? No, now it's the speed of Trump. So tens of millions of Americans who felt ignored by our institutions, ignored by our political, corporate, cultural processes, right, feel acknowledged, energized, that they're being listened to, that their concerns are important to people with power, and it's renewing their faith in this country. And there are a lot of things more important in politics than just passing legislation. Right? Let's say every single Donald Trump executive order is invalidated by the courts, which of course will not happen, because many of his executive orders are simply invalidating Joe Biden's executive orders. But even if that happens, you're bringing attention to issues that matter to tens of millions of forgotten Americans who don't find their concerns and their hero system represented in our elite media, in our elite discourse, in our elite institutions, in our elite universities. So, helping people to regain faith in their country, to regain hope for their country, to regain optimism, to regain a feeling of strength, to regain joy, to regain light at the end of the tunnel, to see their views which are widely held, right? Most people hate affirmative action. Most people hate diversity, equity, and inclusion. And yet the elites have insisted on sticking us with DEI and affirmative action and other nonsense. But most people hate that. But much of life is simply run by elites. Now we've got a populist revolution. that is pushing back on highly unpopular elite concerns such as DEI and intrusive government regulation that promotes litigation around quote-unquote civil rights issues and wants to completely monitor and rework our private lives to mitigate climate change and structural racism and other sorts of concerns which have varying levels of validity and reality by our elite. So the show matters, right? People don't just go to synagogue to perform a mitzvah. Right? They go to a gathering place, the Beit Knesset, a gathering place, to gather. Because there's tremendous strength in gathering. And now people are gathering on X and on social media and on cable TV news, right, to share a joy that for the first time in their memory feels like the levers of power are being exercised on their behalf. So the change in the focus of attention for our country, for our elite media, for our elite academics is a win in and of itself. Governing is partly about passing legislation. It's not only about passing legislation. For example, in the area of foreign policy, the President of the United States has pretty much all the same powers as King George III of 18th century Great Britain. And it doesn't necessarily matter that all these other governments are condemning Trump's Gaza plan. Yeah, wet streets, all right? We've had a very slow, mild, but steady rainfall, I think, for the past 18 hours. And it's going to be even heavier next week. So this should pretty much end the fire season. We've had much more precipitation in Northern California. It's going to collect in dams. So we should be safe from drought conditions. It's like there's been a cleansing rain all over the great fruited plain, washing the filth, the degeneracy, the DEI, right? That rain in the gutters is washing the DEI down the drain. We're washing the filth down the drain. We're making America great again. We're thinking outside the box with regard to the Middle East. We're trying things. We're challenging birthright citizenship. It's good for the soul. It's good for the body. Good for a sense of community. It's good for the mind. It's good for our people. It's good for the United States of America. It's good for the world. What's going on? You have this gentle cleansing rain that is falling down and making everything cleaner and shinier and happier and smarter. Yeah, we've now got much of the tech elite on our side, and they are counter-editing, counteracting the rest of the elite. Like Elon Musk really knows what he's doing with regard to reducing federal government spending. Who thought we would ever see this day where bureaucrats are being held to account? No first world nation has successfully held its bureaucrats in line, because bureaucrats consistently subvert executives if they feel that's in their interest. They consistently evade scrutiny and control by the legislative branch. You usually can't sue bureaucrats. They're largely immune from the scrutiny of the judicial branch. They just do what they want to do. They interpret laws the way they want to interpret them. And for the first time that I can think of, right, we've got this tiny band of DOGE warriors who are starting to hold bureaucrats to account, and it's glorious. Who knew that Elon Musk and DOGE would be so effective? Oh, happy day. Feels like the sun is out. Bye-bye.